It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. This week, brought to you by Rockstar. Yay! And thank you, band. Thank you, fake audience, and welcome to the show. Let me get the chat room open. And before we go any farther, I want to let you guys know that I upgraded, I think I told you this last week, I upgraded my operating system on my laptop, and ever since it restarts itself sometimes as often as 4, 5, 6 times a day. So if I go blank, just know that I will be restarting my computer and back in a minute or two. If it happens, like repeatedly, then we'll pick up this topic another time. So first and foremost, I'd like to say a belated Happy Father's Day to all. I hope you guys had a great one. We did at our house, and the day before, on Saturday, actually went out about 125 miles outside of LA with a group of my friends that I fly remote control planes with all the time, and we were flying out at an abandoned airport in Buttonwillow, California. And while I am by far the worst pilot of the bunch, because the rest of these guys are all highly experienced, I still had a really, really good time with those guys, and then spent a really nice day with my family yesterday, and got treated like a king pretty much all day long. So, thank you, Toonster and Mary Band. Thank you to all you guys saying Happy Father's Day. Do they do Happy Father's Day in countries outside of the U.S.? Is it like an internationally recognized holiday on that day, or is it just a U.S. thing? Yeah, waiting for an answer. No. Hey, Mojo's here. How are you, Mojo? Good to see you. And I know Scott Hansen at his restaurant tonight is serving a classic pizza. But I wondered, Scott, why are you serving focaccia bread with the pizza? It's like bread and bread. Lots of carbs there, dude. One of these days, I'm going to show up. I'm going to surprise Scott Hansen and show up about an hour before Taxi TV at his restaurant and do a remote Taxi TV from the restaurant and sit there stuffing my face with his really good food that we keep hearing about. So anyway, okay, the subject tonight is what broadcast quality really, really means. It used to be that people called it master quality. Okay, and you either did stuff, it was either a demo or a master. Then probably about 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, I think I was the one who coined the term broadcast quality as it relates to music. Prior to that, broadcast quality was largely used as a term in the video industry, meaning that a camera was broadcast quality, meaning it was, it shot video that was good enough to put on the air. Well, the difference between demo quality and broadcast quality and master quality is this. Demo quality, although, a pretty gray area these days because the equipment has gotten so good and so inexpensive that, it used to be demos were done on a 4-track, probably something like a Porta Studio if you didn't go into a pro studio, or maybe a TAC 3324 quarter-inch 4-track. And they sounded like demos. Nobody expected them to sound really, really good. Studio quality, master quality stuff was typically done in a 16 or 24-track studio, typically done with a giant, SSL or a Neve console, typically 2-inch analog tape, and then things migrated over to the digital realm, and then obviously Pro Tools and Logic became the thing or things. And honestly, the area between what is now broadcast quality done in home studios, you can certainly do master quality in a home studio. I think we hear lots of stuff on the radio that starts out in a home studio, probably oftentimes on a laptop. and ends up on a record because the microphones are that good and the gear is that good that you can do that. But broadcast quality, at the time that I started using that term as it relates to music, meant that it was clean enough and well balanced enough in the mix that it could be used on air. Might not be good enough for a record, although it oftentimes is. So, it's really become a very gray area. Demos now can sound like masters, broadcast quality can sound like a master. Sometimes demos are still done. Heck, I've seen people do demos that were really impressive, by the way, on an iPhone or an iPad using GarageBand, and the stuff sounds really, really good. So clearly the areas are blurred, but broadcast quality still seems to throw people for a loop. A lot of people don't know exactly what it means, and frankly, it means a lot of things. And I was looking at a checklist getting ready for today's show. I wrote a checklist probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. Never really finished it. And I was going down this list thinking, my God, if I tell people all the things that are on the list, they're going to think that every single one of these things has to be perfect. Not really true. Yes, Johnny 0311, I did invent the internet. Al Gore and I invented it together. Anyway, you don't have to have every single one of these things done to perfection. And you can also there are varying degrees of what needs to be broadcast quality and when. So know that these are guidelines, not necessarily hard, fast rules, but I want to help you zero in on kind of the practical aspects of broadcast quality. And I think it's easier to achieve it today than ever before. So back in the days of just purely analog recording, one of the things that made things sound obviously done in a home studio or in a demo studio and not done in a real studio would typically be the signal to noise ratio, which resulted in really hissy recordings. We've all heard it. Cassettes, you'd play something on a cassette, and before the song would come in, you would hear hiss right before the downbeat. Maybe there'd be a quiet passage in a song and you would hear the hiss. Very typically, that was a result of the analog tape because it sounded hissy. Could also be a result of lots of outboard gear being used or recording levels that were too low. And there's a thing called a noise floor. That means just the general noise that's caused from outboard gear, the inherent noise in the recording console, the tape hiss. You combine it all, and there is a thing called a noise floor. It's hiss. It's noise. Sometimes it's hum. It could be a bad ground on a guitar amp or on a cable or somewhere in the studio. Typically, when the music is loud enough and the signal is strong enough, meaning that the meters are moving enough and you've got a nice healthy recording level and a nice healthy mix level, that would cover up the noise floor and you wouldn't hear it until a quiet passage came along. So that's why they use leader tape. One of the reasons they used leader tape back in the day was that they would put a leader right in front of the downbeat on the beginning of the song. Otherwise, you would hear the hiss leading up to the downbeat. Obviously, you want to get rid of the count off most of the time and things like that as well. So, got that covered. Okay, hissy sound recordings were a dead giveaway that something was a demo and not master quality. Let's see, distortion that wasn't intentional. Now, in today's world, broadcast quality, somebody's car alarm is going on outside. So, distortion. Now, if you listen to the Black Keys and a lot of other modern bands, it freaks me out because back in my day, we fought a hard battle to make sure there was no distortion and everything sounded pretty pristine in the recordings. I mean, sure, you'd want a Marshall stack to sound distorted or, a great lead guitar sound to sound distorted, but you didn't want the bass to sound distorted. You certainly didn't want the lead vocals to sound distorted. You didn't want the overall recording to sound distorted. But now there are some genres or styles where distortion is something that sounds cool and modern. freaks me out a little bit, but it does sound cool in context. So what if you've got something that isn't in one of those styles, that's not like old blue or modern blues rock? Let's say you're doing a singer, well, then even that singer songwriter things sometimes have distortion that's intentionally put on them. But a genre, let's say an adult contemporary song, okay, kind of a big, an Adele song. I don't think there are any Adele songs where the bass, the guitars, well, maybe the guitars, the bass, the drums, the lead vocal, or the piano are intentionally distorted. Really hard to concentrate with that car alarm going. Um, anyway, so when somebody hears that and they hear distortion in a genre that typically or almost always wouldn't have distortion, immediately that discounts it as being broadcast quality, and they go, can't use it. Doesn't sound right for the genre. Um, could be a single instrument that's in the mix that's distorting, not by intent. Could be the overall levels are too hot when you're mixing. I don't want to get too technical, but the mix bus, that's the left and right channels coming out of the console and going to whatever you're printing your mix to, which is these days a digital file more often than not. If you're slamming the meters too hard, if you're slamming anything in the audio chain too hard, you could very well be distorting, and it makes the whole thing sound distorted. That knocks it out of the box for being broadcast quality. Okay, now, what about the alternative, which is the levels are too low? I think we might have talked about this when we had Rob Shirelli on the show last week, the week before, whenever Rob was last here. If your record exec or your music supervisor, whatever your capacity in the industry is, and if you're looking, Scott Hansen says he just broke into my car. Pretty funny, Scott. If you're listening to music and the first two or three things you listen to are all at a normal level, we all have seen this. You turn up the knob on whatever you normally listen to, your computer or your iPhone or your stereo or your car radio, whatever. You know where the sweet spot is, where the level is loud enough to sound good. And then all of a sudden along comes a song and the level is too low, meaning that the person who mixed it probably really didn't know enough about audio, and again, this isn't really technical stuff, not very technical, but the levels are just too low. The meters, especially, like in peak reading mode, if you see very little meter movement, then your stuff is going to sound low in volume comparatively with other stuff that the listening party is listening to, and it's going to sound wimpy. They're going to have to lean over and turn the knob way up, and you're probably going to get some of that hiss or ambient noise. The noise floor is going to rise up because you haven't printed enough level. And you're going to get amplifier noise from whatever device you're listening on. So that, again, would knock it out of the box for being broadcast quality. Okay, this next one is one of my favorites. I hear it all the time. Electric or acoustic guitars that literally sound like they were recorded with all the bottom end rolled off, and it sounds like somebody's using an old safety razor to strum the strings. It just sounds so tinny and brittle that it literally hurts your ears. It's like fingernails on a blackboard. There are a million ways to make that happen, all of them probably bad. It would be extremely rare that you would want that sound on any kind of recording, but that is a dead giveaway that something is not broadcast quality. Remember, broadcast quality doesn't mean that it sounds like a record that cost $250,000 or $500,000 or $1 million to record. It means that it's clean, clear, and well balanced enough that if you hear it in the context of a TV show or a movie, that it sounds good. Okay, so it is a little less than master quality that you would typically hear on an expensively made record in a pro studio. So yeah, a thinly recorded guitar or a guitar that's mixed to sound super, super thin and really metallic, that's a dead giveaway. I hear it on vocals sometimes. You almost would have to. Sometimes I wonder, it's like, how did they get the voice to sound that bad? Sometimes vocals have like a ton of sibilants, meaning that the S's are really spitty and overly bright. And I don't think there are that many people in the world with hearing deficiencies that they just can't hear it. But I think what they're doing is boosting the top end, the treble, um, just boosting it to make it sound like it's cutting through everything else. And in doing so, they eventually get to the point where it just sounds super, super bright. And that renders it obviously not broadcast quality. Sometimes the overall mix sounds that bright. That is more than likely a result of either just you're an absolute rookie. More often than not, I would suspect it's in the monitoring. What are you mixing on? And frankly, look, you don't need $3,000 monitors to mix what you're doing at home. Spend a few $100 on monitors. I know people that will switch back and forth between mixing on headphones and mixing on monitors. As I've mentioned on other shows, I used to use Oratones. I would mix on these guys, my trusty Yamaha NS10s. There's that alarm again. But yeah, bad monitoring. It just could be that something in your audio chain adds a lot of top end to your monitors, or maybe you bought some monitors that have a ton of top end, so therefore or don't have a lot of top end, so you compensate by constantly making everything on its own. If you take every instrument and boost the treble or the top end or the high end on it, notice how hard I'm working to not mention numbers like 5K or 8K. If you boost the top end on the guitar, and then the vocal sounds dull by comparison, and then you boost the top end on the vocal, and then by comparison, maybe the cymbals don't have enough top end, and so you boost the top end on those, and before you know it, the whole mix just sounds like razor blades coming out of speakers. So remember, I don't want to make this so much a show about engineering or mixing. I've already done those shows, and you can find them in the archives. But generally speaking, it's better to roll off unwanted frequencies. If you've got an instrument like a hi-hat, there is no bottom end in a hi-hat, but yet you're going to get the rumble of the kick drum and the tom-toms in the hi-hat. If you just roll off the bottom end, get rid of the frequencies that you don't need. It's called subtractive equalization. If you do that, it's probably and typically better than adding top end, especially if you're adding top end to everything, because you want to make your mix sound bright and professional and give it that sheen that you hear on radio stuff or on records. Well, trust me, those guys are being more judicious in their EQ than just adding a bunch of treble to everything in the mix. Sometimes it sounds dull. The whole mix could sound dull. Again, that's probably a case of bad monitoring. It might be your listening environment. You might be working in a home studio that's a 10 by 12 second bedroom, or a basement with concrete block walls, or a really low ceiling, a 7-foot basement ceiling and sheetrock all around. And it's naturally pretty reflective and tends to accentuate if you've got a window that is somewhere near your monitors. Anything that will reflect sound could potentially brighten up the mix unnaturally, and you compensate for that by rolling off the high end or the top end. And what you end up with, could be monitors, is you end up with a mix that overall sounds kind of like that, and that, again, not broadcast quality. All right, and here's a tough one. Flat and boring mixes. Mixing is a craft. Recording is a craft. Mixing is a craft. It's part art and part science, and some of it requires taste, some of it requires some technical knowledge, but it's something that you just learn over time by doing it over and over. It's like a golf swing, it's muscle memory. Anybody who's engineered a lot of stuff or mixed a lot of stuff, you know, almost as soon as you hear a snare drum that sounds a little bit dull or lifeless, you pretty much know which frequencies are going to fix that. If you're in the recording stage, you pretty much know what a good alternative microphone might be or a different placement for the microphone. But when you have a mix that the whole thing just sounds lifeless, that's bad. That is not broadcast quality, okay? How do you know how good your stuff sounds? I was going to save this till the end of the show. Boy, this show's going really quickly, so get your questions ready now. But if your mix sounds dull and lifeless compared to something else, now don't put on like a dance pop record and compare your singer-songwriter film and TV song to a dance pop record. They're different styles. They go for a different aesthetic, different mixing styles. They'll have different amounts of reverb, different amounts of bottom end, different levels of drums in the mix. The vocal will be at a different place. All these things are variables. So what do if you've got a singer-songwriter song and you want to hear if it sounds like it's broadcast quality? Play something else that's similar. If you're a male artist with an acoustic guitar and just a small ensemble, find another male artist, similar tempo, similar complement of instruments, and a similar arrangement. And listen to that and switch back and forth at the same level. Balance the levels out. You can use your meters on your console. You could run it into 2 channels for your mix and 2 channels for the other thing, or just use volume knobs on the other source, whatever. Get them to be about the same level and do what they call A-Bing, which is simply switching back and forth between yours and theirs and yours and theirs. And if they're at the same level and yours sounds dull and lifeless, then you've got to drill down and dig a little deeper. What about mine sounds dull and lifeless? Does my vocal sound as present? Gee, no, it doesn't. Why not? I would isolate the vocal, hit the solo button, and just listen to the vocal and go, wow, it sounds dull and lifeless, on the multi-track. Maybe I should have used a different microphone, or maybe I had the microphone slightly off axis instead of pointing directly at the singer. There are myriad of reasons that could cause a vocal to sound dull. What about the acoustic guitar? Same thing. So isolate each thing and see how they sound on their own. And then bring them all back up and listen to it overall and go, okay, well, the mix from the other thing that sounds good definitely has more kick, more bass, and more snare in it. So let me start there with my stuff. Let me try and match my bass, kick, and snare to the levels of the bass, kick, and snare and the other thing. And again, do that by A-Bing. And then add the acoustic guitar. Oh, my acoustic guitar sounds okay. It sounds adequate, but it doesn't have the sparkle or maybe the body or the I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. There's the first. But you might want to, throw a really short digital delay on it and split the original and the delayed version. I'm talking really short, just enough to barely hear it, and then pan it hard left and hard right so that it makes it wider in the mix and it becomes more present in the mix because of where it's panned in that slight little delay. I'm talking like, I don't know, 45 to 65 milliseconds maybe. So just sit there. Comparative analysis by A-Bing yours against somebody else's mix of a similar thing at the same level. And that is so incredibly instructive that you will learn a lot. It's like if you were standing right behind Tiger Woods while he's swinging a golf club for an 8-hour practice session, and you were standing right behind him and you noticed, oh, his shoulders are like this, or he's standing, his back is like that, or he's holding this is the way he's holding his club. He's not doing the pinky finger, index finger overlap. Well, eventually, if you watch enough of that and you stood behind him all the time, you would get much better. Probably not as good as Tiger, but definitely better. All right. An unbalanced mix. We hear this all the time. We hear stuff that it sounds like it was reasonably well recorded and reasonably well mixed, but we'll be shocked. It's like, dude, why is the vocal so low? You just took an otherwise really good song, an otherwise really good recording, and probably an otherwise really good mix, and just by having the vocal 2 or 3 dBs too low, the ear is hunting for it. The listener is hunting for it. You can't really, you hear it, you know it's in there, you can hear the melody, but it's hard to make out the lyrics. Depending on what kind of song and what kind of arrangement and what genre it is, you want varying degrees of vocal. But more often than not, having the vocal be at the point where it's easy to understand what it's saying is a good thing. It helps convey the emotion as well. And I know that it may be, I may be getting, I don't know what the word is, digging too deep, to say that a vocal that's mixed a little low that stifles the emotional quotient of a song, that crosses into broadcast quality. But it does, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this show today. It's not all just engineering stuff or technical stuff. Broadcast quality, again, it just means this is good enough that it could be included on a TV show and sound good. Nobody would notice that it sounds bad. Maybe that's the definition of broadcast quality, is nobody notices that it sounds less than wonderful. Okay, there, quote me on that one. So an unbalanced mix. It could be that it's too bass heavy, or the drums are too loud. What if you've got that male singer songwriter with a small ensemble, acoustic guitar, very basic electric guitar, bass, drums, and a vocal, and the bass is just really loud because your monitors at home were pressed up against the wall and they lied to you about how much bass you're hearing in the mix. Or no, I think I got that reversed. Anyway, if you end up with too much bass in your mix, yeah, let's say that your monitors are bass deficient. Your monitoring situation causes it to sound like there's too little bass, and you overcompensate by bringing the bass up, and you didn't check it in a pair of headphones, you didn't listen to it on another stereo or in your car to kind of find the sweet spot for all of them, which is possible. And now you sent this thing off to somebody, and the supervisor's listening to it going, wow, this song would be great, except it sounds too tubby on the bottom end. Same thing could be true for lack of bottom end, that if your monitoring situation is such that it's giving you too much bass because the speakers are up against the wall, or your room's got some weird bass reflections going on that tend to amplify or exaggerate the bass, you could lower the bass in the mix, and then when you send it out to somebody else, it sounds thin and doesn't have enough bottom end. So there you go. Too much reverb or delay in the mix. This one I'm going to typically call a rookie mistake, and this is one that we hear fairly often as well. This is something that separates demos from broadcast quality, certainly from master quality. People who sing their own vocals and aren't comfortable with how well they sing tend to add more reverb than they should to the vocal to try and hide the fact that they're a little insecure about their vocals. Well, if you're an objective listener and you aren't that paranoid singer and you listen to a vocal that's just swimming in echo, unless that reverb is really right for that genre and is right for the times. Different eras like different amounts of reverb. And a few years ago, we went through a period where everything sounded totally dry. Reverb, not cool. Now reverb is coming back. I mean, listen to some of the stuff by, I don't know, maybe Mike Snow or Fleet Foxes. Some of that stuff has a ton of reverb. Some of the Mike Snow stuff sounds like it was recorded in a cave. And it's cool for that genre. maybe on an adult contemporary thing, on a big soaring vocal, there might be fairly long decay time on the reverb with some pre-delay on it that makes it sound big and just big. Then it's cool. Um, if you have a dance pop thing, and you have like a 5 second decay with just tons of reverb on the vocal, it's going to make the vocal swim a lot. So you might want to have delays that are going to make the vocal pop more and make it sound cool and modern, but not swimming in reverb. So there are just a million ways to screw up reverb and delays. One of the things that I hear pretty frequently with delays, and there's no good excuse for it anymore because so many of the delay programs have what I would call like an auto calculate mode where you put in the BPM of the song and it will calculate the reverb. It's like full time, half time, quarter time, eighth time. I mean not the reverb, the delays, so that the delays are in sync with the tempo of the song. If the delays are out of sync with the tempo of the song, it's going to get your attention. You're going to go, what's that? It's going to sound like a mistake. It's going to sound like a drummer that's just, like sneakers in a clothes dryer. If the timing of the delay, no matter what instrument it's on, is off, that is a dead giveaway that what you've got is definitely not broadcast quality and certainly not master quality. Unusual panning. This one I don't hear all that often, but when you do hear it, it comes across as a rookie mistake. Sometimes people will use auto panning. They'll use a delay with two outputs, and they will spread the delay, the two outputs, far left and far right. They don't put the original up the middle. Even if they do, it probably wouldn't matter. But the delays combined with their level in the mix, combined with being out of time with the song's tempo, make it go like this. And that's what you notice. You notice whatever, it could be a vocal, could be a guitar part, could be a percussion thing, whatever it is that has those delays happening way out here, you feel like you're at a tennis match at Wimbledon. And it takes your focus away from the song as a whole. Like that, I used hand gestures. Let's see. Okay, here's one you hear from us all the time. This is one that we hear from the industry all the time. Dated sounding instruments. It kills us. It breaks our hearts when we hear somebody who's a great songwriter or a great instrumental composer and they are using old dated samples that, like horn samples are one that I'd say more frequently than almost anything else. Possibly strings are a close second, but horn samples that sound like they came off a DX7 from 1986. Unless the song has a retro vibe to it and you want that sound, having old samples that make something sound dated will kill your chances of impressing somebody that you've got a broadcast quality mix faster than anything. And because there are great samples available from a number of wonderful sources these days, and most of your competitive musicians out there, or many of them, are using those samples, by comparison, you really stick out like a sore thumb. So the bar has been raised, and people on the industry side that used to be not as picky about the sounds of samples. I think they were impressed initially that there were samples out there, that you didn't need a real string section or a real horn section, and people tolerated cheesy sounding stuff. Well, now the sample libraries are so incredibly good that when they hear cheesy sounding stuff, unless it's intended to be cheesy for effect because it's the type of genre or type of music or style that you're doing, it's immediately noticeable, and you could have a great song, and if they hear cheesy sounding samples, you are considered to be a rookie and your mix is no longer broadcast quality, which is heartbreaking. Here's one that we hear all the time, and this is usually from people that are 50 years old or older. And it's not because they're crotchety and old and they're, like dementia is setting in. It's because they grew up in an era, probably the 80s and 90s, I'm guessing, kind of that transitional period, maybe late 80s to early 90s. Chorused guitars. Um, like a Gibson semi hollow body, what is a 335, with kind of a round, not too bright, not distorted sound, and then going through a chorus, like a really thick chorusy sound. It sounds like old Larry Carlton guitar. Not cool in today's market if you want to sound modern and contemporary. Again, all these things are subject to, are you going for that sound because you're recording a piece that you want to have sound like it's from the 80s? Then it's cool. Whip out that Roland chorus and use it to your heart's content. Otherwise, probably not so much because it's old school and it is a dead giveaway. Cheesy old school drum sounds that are from an old, out of date drum machine. By the way, if you guys saw the show 2 weeks, drawing a blank on his name. What's the gentleman's name? He was here from Phoenix. I really like him, and I can't think of his name right now. Papa Craw, Crawdaddy, Richard. I can't think of Richard's last name. Anyway, I was really in shock. His stuff sounded really good, and he's using like a pretty ancient recording system and using, I think, an old Roland drum machine. Richard Dance, thank you, Andy. His stuff sounded remarkably good, but there's a guy who's invested the time to learn how to make the best with what he had, and his stuff sounded very competitive. But if you buy yourself a drum machine in 1988 and you're still using the drum machine but yet you're trying to sound modern with it, it's probably not going to sound modern or contemporary, and it's going to make your overall sound, your mixes sound dated, therefore not broadcast quality. Again, you could be doing something, that's retro influenced or totally retro sounding by intent, and you want that old sound, pull that drum machine out or use some, virtual drums that intentionally have that sound. But again, only if you're going for retro influenced or totally retro and it works in the context of what you're doing. Otherwise, if you don't consider yourself a drummer and you're not really good at programming and you whip out this old drum machine, it's what you've got, it's what you know, and you've really not invested the time to learn how to make it sound better like Richard Dance has, then you're only hurting yourself and your stuff is not going to sound broadcast quality. I did the vocals that are too loud or too soft already. Let's talk about vocals that are pitchy. Modern singer-songwriters that have that kind of very lo-fi, and not just singer-songwriters, could be a rock band, could be a garage rock band, certainly isn't going to be an adult contemporary, or typically not a pop artist either. But for singer-songwriters or garage rock people, sometimes being pitchy is part of the vibe. It's part of the sound. It's part of the attitude. But there's pitchy and there's pitchy. It's really easy to tell if somebody didn't intend to be pitchy in their vocals and they are. That knocks you out of the box for broadcast quality. If you are trying to be pitchy so that you can be cool, and you go too far or it's too obvious or too forced, that can also knock you out of the box. Then again, if you are naturally pitchy in the right way, which I don't really know how to tell you to do that, but some people are just naturally pitchy because it's, the vocal is coming from the heart and the mind and the emotion, and they're not sitting there worrying about perfecting the pitch. There's some notes that are bent. But they sound really good in the context of that kind of song, that kind of emotion, and that kind of vocal delivery. That can be broadcast quality. But imagine if you're trying to do, something like an Adele song, and it's pitchy. Not going to work. But there are probably some Amy Winehouse tracks where she's pitchy because she's cool and it works really well in the context of what she does. So if it's part of the attitude, part of the vibe, part of the emotion, part of the texture, and part of the overall sound, pitchiness to some extent can be really cool. But again, it's really obvious when you're pitchy and you don't intend it to be pitchy. It's also equally as obvious when you're trying to be cool and modern and have, do that, like that I don't give a crap vocal attitude, and you push it too hard and you come across as somebody who's working to sound pitchy. Not happening. Don't do it. Same thing goes for instruments. I heard something the other day that was literally a guitar vocal. It was on a TV show. The song was amazingly good. The guitar sounded like it was probably a 3/4 size guitar that still had the same strings on it. It was probably like the first guitar I ever had. Everybody's had, I think, the Stella Sunburst, $99 guitar. That was like your starter guitar. This sounded like one of those guitars that you got when you were 12 or 13. Mom and dad bought it for you for Christmas. And here you are, 60 years later, 40, 50, 60 years later, and you've still got the strings that came on it from the factory. They've got so much rust on them that they barely shine at all anymore. They sound terrible, but sometimes that guitar with those old bedraggled strings played the right way with the right pick in the right context of the right genre and style of song with the right attitude. You add that up with the I don't give a crap pitchy vocal, and there's magic going on there. But again, if it's not by intent and it's not part of what you do naturally or do well, it's going to knock you out of the box for broadcast quality. So there you go. Conversely, imagine if Tom Waits had an acoustic guitar that sounded amazing and they auto-tuned his vocal and put a ton of really sweet, like 3 or 4 seconds of played on it with a nice big pre-delay, and that wouldn't sound right either. Everything relates to context. So that's why I'm talking about broadcast quality today, is there aren't really hard, fast rules that you can apply to everything. It's always about the context of what you're doing. Does this work within the context of this song, this arrangement, this style, my vocal, and what I'm trying to accomplish in the overall grand scheme of things? Overcomplicated rhythmic stuff. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. You could have a great recording, a really awesome song, a great vocal delivery. Everything about it is working really, really well, except you've got like 4 guitar parts, and they are so rhythmically complex that they almost go to war with each other. Then it makes it not broadcast quality. Could be that you've got a percussion thing. It could be something as simple as the hi-hat is just too busy, or maybe you've got no hi-hat at all. All these things, again, that's part of an arrangement thing, but all these little nuances add up to the overall big picture and can knock things out of being in the broadcast quality box. Speaking of overly complex melodies and rhythms, look, a lot of times the music that you're pitching is going to get used as source music, background source music, meaning that it will appear to be ostensibly coming from a jukebox, or could be that, somebody's in a piano bar, or somebody's in a car having a conversation and the radio's on in the background. Whatever it is, if it's in the background and it's coming from a source like a car radio or a live band playing at a bar or a jukebox, or could be a swanky cosmopolitan restaurant that's got light, smooth jazz in the background. If whatever you're pitching, it may be really well written, really well executed, really well everything, really good everything, but it's a little too complex. It's going to distract the listener's ear. It becomes the point of interest, the focal point sometimes, and distracts from the dialogue. So even though everything is right, if you were to listen to it on its own, when you're making music for TV and film, think about that. Think about actors and what they do. And you don't want to do anything that's going to get in the way of what they're doing. Stiff, obviously MIDI-driven instrumental performances that lack a human feel and have no pocket. Nothing will knock you out of the box of broadcast quality faster than that. And again, we hear stuff that comes in from Taxi members that are obviously good composers, but the stuff sounds very MIDI driven. Now, that's great. If you're doing certain types of electronic music, it would behoove you to have it sound, stiff and MIDI driven. That's the vibe. I hear a lot of modern stuff now where they've got drums and synth elements that almost sound like they're coming off that little, mini Casio that's like this big, 14 or 16 inches across and like 4 inches deep. Really cheesy sounds, but in the context of everything else that's going on, they sound really appropriate and right and really cool. But more often than not, the stuff that we hear, sounds like some cheesy old rhythm box that came with a $99 Costco keyboard, which, by the way, some of those sound pretty good these days. But it more often than not, if it's stiff and has no humanity in the feel, it's going to knock you out of the box for broadcast quality. Let's see, getting down to the last couple here. Mastering. I know somebody's going to ask about mastering. So in years past, I've talked about for film and TV stuff, especially TV, that mastering wasn't all that important. I didn't want people running out dropping $50 or $100, $200 a song to get stuff mastered, while it may never generate that much in income. However, more and more people are becoming at least moderately good at mastering their own stuff using plugins. Remember when Shirelli was on the show and he had the plugin, which I can't remember what it's called, but you can find it at finalmix.com. It's the Rob Shirelli, like all-in-one turn one knob plugin. It makes everything sound really good. And what it's doing is essentially, it's kind of like idiot-proof mastering, and it really sounds good. Yeah, it sounds good. Anyway, if your stuff isn't mastered and the other stuff that is equally well written and equally well performed and equally appropriate for a particular scene, chances are that the stuff that has at least some sort of mastering on it is going to sound a little better. Mastering basically makes sure that the bottom end is where it should be, the top end is where it should be, that the mid-range frequencies are where they should be. So it's somebody checking the EQ of the final mix, the overall holistic EQ, and giving it a certain amount of compression so that it's got a competitive, compressed, modern sound to it. Equally applicable, but in a different way, for stripped down singer-songwriter stuff, as it might be for a dancey poppy thing. It's different, but applicable in both cases. So would I recommend that you go out and pay a professional mastering engineer to do every one of your songs? Probably not. Are there people out there who know what they're doing that are relatively inexpensive? Yes. It's going to take some trial and error to find them. We've got plenty of them in the taxi community, plenty of them hanging out on the forum. My advice would be give somebody your latest, greatest piece of work and pay them whatever they charge, 25, $50, whatever it costs, and have them master something and then listen to their mastered version and your unmastered version, again, in an A-B where you're switching back and forth between theirs and yours, theirs and yours. Make sure that you match the levels, which is going to be a little bit hard because the overall apparent level of the mastered stuff is going to sound a little louder than your unmastered stuff, because the mastered stuff is going to have a dynamic range of like this, where the unmastered stuff, the dynamic range could be a lot greater. So check that out and compare them. And if you think that that person for $35 or whatever they charged did a really good job, then consider using them on the stuff that really matters. Don't just routinely give them everything you do to master. You may end up not pitching it. If you create a piece of music that's got a low probability for success because it's some obtuse genre that doesn't get used very often, try Shirelli's plugin. Throw that on there. Try learning something about mastering yourself. Mastering is about common sense and taste. It's not like, there are mastering engineers that I've heard that can do amazing stuff. They can take a mix done by, the best mixing engineers in the world and still make it sound better. But I'm not talking about mastering at that level. I'm talking about making it sound as good as the other stuff or better, and making it competitive for reality TV. Okay, there you go, reality TV. I'm trying to keep up with what you guys are saying, but you know what? I hope everybody's watching the chat room, because I know a lot of these guys in the chat room, and they certainly have valid opinions on stuff they're talking about mastering right now. Somebody says Rob's plugin is only $19. You can't go wrong. Michael, what causes a ticking sound in the recording? How do you fix it? GI Covington, if you're a man and you hear a ticking sound, it may be that your wife put a bomb in your studio. I don't know, man, that could be, it's obviously something that's probably clock driven if it's happening on a steady time thing, but there are just a million things that could be causing that. It could be a poorly shielded cable from something that's clock driven in your system. I don't know. I just don't know. If it's could be an air conditioning with a vent with a loose slat. Let's see, do I have anything left here? Arrangement. We were talking about this with Rob. We've talked about it many times on the show, but so much of what makes stuff sound good from an audio perspective is actually the arrangement. The less busy the arrangement is, the more naturally good the instruments individually will sound, and the better they will sound as a group. So again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Do you need 4 guitar parts? No. Does each one sound cool? Yeah, maybe. But do you need 4? No. So take 2 of them out. You have to get used to it, because you just got yourself used to 4 and you fell emotionally in love with all 4 of them. Take 2 of them out. Walk away from it for a day and come back and listen to it. Maybe you're using 2 parts in the verse and the other 2 parts in the chorus, or maybe a combination thereof of when these 4 parts are coming in and out. Less is generally better, and that contributes a lot to the overall sound, which again contributes to something sounding like its broadcast quality. I think I've covered everything. So I'm going to take a little drink of my Rockstar because I'm thirsty and I've been talking for 54 minutes straight without taking a breath. And why don't you guys ask some questions? Michael, are we still into any arena sounds to sound live or live in the bathroom shower sound? Jesse asked that question. Jesse, it all depends on the genre and the context. Sure, if you're doing a garage, a garage rock thing, you may want to do a vocal in the shower or put a guitar amp in a bathtub or out in your garage for real. Um, yeah, there are still times when it applies. But you may want the guitars and the drums to sound really garagey, but maybe not the bass so much. Maybe you want that firm bottom end with the bass and the kick to not have reverb on them and not sound so garagey. Then again, maybe you want to put a little room reverb on them, and otherwise they might sound out of context with the other stuff. So again, there's no hard, no hard fast rule. Um, Why doesn't the show go 1 more hour? I don't know if my throat could take it. Um, what are the ingredients in that Rockstar? Mostly a lot of vitamins and stuff. I think it's got taurine in it. I was reading up about all this recently. I don't drink a lot of these, but I do tend to drink it on the show. Um, for a couple of years, people really tried hard to prove that taurine was evil. And from everything that I've read a couple of weeks ago, the jury is still out, but it's sounding like it's leaning towards no hard evidence that taurine can hurt you. However, it does have a fair amount of caffeine in it. These in particular, let's see. I can't find it quickly enough. But I think I read that the average, that a Red Bull, for instance, has about the same amount of caffeine as a cup of coffee. So I have a cup of coffee when I wake up every morning, and I drink these babies for the show. Um, you think Michael's not working hard enough already? I don't know what context. Oh, that was about the show going for another hour. Is a simple singer-songwriter arrangement, in a simple singer-songwriter arrangement, is a vocal and guitar enough, or is it good to add a bass line? Again, it's all about the context. I think it's fairly rare to have just a guitar, vocal, and a bass. If you were going to go for that approach, you might even want to try something like a cello rather than just a bass. Sometimes when I hear a guitar, vocal, and an electric bass, I kind of miss the drums. Um, but something you can do that my son-in-law Hayden has done, and it's worked very well for him, is using a kick drum, a virtual kick drum or a sampled kick drum as your click. Gives you a nice steady beat. But remember, the kick drum has to sound right for the song. You shouldn't have like a hard rock kick drum for a song that's a sensitive, emotionally driven acoustic guitar vocal singer-songwriter thing. Have something that's a little more pillowy and maybe a little further down in the mix. Then you could add an electric bass to it and then add brushes on a snare and play them yourself if you can. And it makes it sound really human and really hard to detect that that the bass drum was out of a box. Um, Limoncello. I had some on Saturday when I was out with the guys flying our RC planes in the desert. Somebody whipped out a bottle of cold limoncello. It tasted like cough medicine. Um, can you get the point across with just a guitar vocal? I believe yes. That question was from Mojo Bone, and I think you can. Whatever it was that I heard the other day with just the guitar and the vocal, and the guitar literally sounded like that, guitar you got for Christmas 40 years ago, and the vocal was gravelly and pitchy, but it worked so well. So yes, I think you can do it. A guitar case kick drum, absolutely. I once recorded something that ended up on a big album, and I can't remember what it was, but God, who was that with? I don't know. We were on the road. I flew out to wherever the band was doing a show. I think I might have actually recorded them live. It's a big band, just can't remember who it was. But um, we were back in the room late that night, and we actually took a cardboard box and put it up against a wall. It's a fairly large box, like a TV set size box, and we put a kick drum pedal in front of it. And the drummer just kept time with the kick drum, and somebody else was playing like a little, film can with pot seed shaker in it, or rice. That's what it was, rice in the shaker, and that worked really well. Um, oh, Mojo says that was actually the answer, not the question. Sorry. Um, Mary Van says I could probably use an empty coffee container for a djembe. Pringles can percussion. Yep. I just had some Pringles barbecue buffalo sauce Pringles the other day. Not that good. Um, the screeners have access to earlier versions of our songs at all times, so they can see the improvement from the last critique submission, for example. Um, Honestly, whatever you've got up on your thing is, they could go in and listen to anything that's up on your taxi hosting page. However, I don't think that in most cases that they're going to go back and um, as much as I know this is going to sound terrible, I probably should just keep my mouth shut. I don't think in most cases that they're that concerned going, I'd like to see how much progress this member has made. Sometimes there are members that, for whatever reason, strike a fancy with a screener, and we do print out the emails we get about screeners, both good and bad. We take stuff from the screener shout out section of the forum. We circulate an email to the staff and the screeners. We print the stuff out. We put it up in the kitchen. Obviously, we can't force them to read it. I would say most screeners don't go on the forum, but some do on occasion. There are a few that have been known to go on the forum quite regularly, but for the most part, they don't. They've got lives outside of Taxi. They're working on records or whatever other projects they do. Remember, they're all independent contractors for us. So it's not like they're going to go home at night and spend 3 hours on the forum going, oh, wow, check this member out. Yeah, I remember screening his or her thing a week ago. I'm going to go listen to their Taxi page and check out their old stuff to see how much they've progressed. But that said, there are cases where that stuff does happen. I just certainly wouldn't place any bets on it, okay? Um, Now we're talking about vodka. um, Empty coffee cans make good drums. When will we be able to filter email from Taxi? Well, we actually got signed up with the new email provider. I'm glad you asked that question. Um, we did a test email with them that had some complications, and frankly, I've been working on our Google AdWords stuff because we got rid of the company that was babysitting our AdWords account. I wasn't happy with the results they were getting, so I am now getting AdWords trained by somebody who's beating me up in the process, and I've been trying probably like 3 or 4 days a week. I've been out of the office at his office for 3 or 4 hours a day. There are days I've gotten in my car when I left there, I just wanted to break down and cry. It's hard. I mean, I've known a fair amount about Google AdWords for several years. Learning it at a ninja level is like learning to mix at a ninja level, or learning to play guitar at a ninja level, or doing anything at a ninja level. So that is a long way of saying that the switch over to the new email provider, we've got everything set up with the account. We've done the test, but the AdWords thing became a priority, so it's going to be a little while longer. By the way, we have had so many great listings lately coming in. I'm astounded. I own the company. I've been here for almost 22 years, I think. Um, my staff is doing such an amazing job of bringing in just incredibly good listings from incredibly, you know, high-ranking people, I guess you would call them, that I'm just blown away. And sometimes I get a little freaked out when we see a listing for something fairly common. Look, I understand if somebody's looking for bagpipe music for a scene in a film, I know most of you guys don't play bagpipes, but if they're looking for pop music, and we get 76 submissions, and it was like a big time A-list Hollywood music supervisor, and sometimes we don't get enough submissions that we can find anything to forward them, and it's heartbreaking. So please read the listings carefully, and just know I don't make any money. Nobody makes any money. We're not like other companies where the more you submit, the more money we make. All the money goes to paying the screeners, and we just want to get as much good stuff in the door so that we can find good stuff from you guys and gals and send it to them, the supervisors and the libraries and the labels, and get more of our members' deals. I've got to say the number of deals is at an all-time high, and as you well know, most people don't bother to tell us. Jesse Peck asks, Michael, do you think as of today a solo approach or a band approach? Who are winning out to forwards? I think Jesse's saying who's getting more forwards, bands or solo artists? It depends what the listing is asking for. I mean, you could answer the question just by going in and counting how many singer-songwriter things. By the way, have you noticed we're getting more listings lately from record labels, which is kind of shocking to me, where they're looking for great songs. Great songs are at such a premium that they're actually mentioning to us, I'll even listen to like a stripped down demo if the song is amazing. We went through a very long period where that wasn't the case. So we're mentioning that now in more of our listings. Mojo says, thanks for getting emails in a more timely fashion and some really good ops. Thanks, Michael and Taxi. You are welcome, Mojo. Scanning these as fast as I could. Oh, Amanda says, I wish I could afford to rejoin. Let me ask you guys this while we're on the air. We're getting more and more requests. I mean, the economy hasn't gotten better. Let's face the facts. And we're getting more and more people asking us if we would do some sort of like an easy pay thing where they could join Taxi for 3 payments of $99 a month each. Is that something that appeals to you guys? And yes, Ustreamer, you can check who gets forwarded the Taxi forum. I know, but a very small number of our members go on the forum. It's surprising how many people belong and don't. Man, things are scrolling by really fast here. Sorry, I'm trying to do my best to be Evelyn Wood. Amanda says yes. So we're considering doing that. The thing that we've always feared in doing that is, like, on one hand, we want to make it easy for you guys to join and not have to take a $300 hit all at once. But we also know that some people are going to sign up and spread the payments over 3 months. And when it comes time for the second payment, they may have maxed out their card. And then we're going to have to call, a couple hundred people a month to say, hey, your card didn't clear. Then we have to put their membership on hold. Then we have to unfreeze their membership when they finally do pay. It's kind of an accounting nightmare. Yeah, monthly is optimal, but the reason we don't do monthly is for the very reason I just mentioned. Could you imagine if we had, 10,000 members and we had to rely that they were going to have whatever it works out to be, 25, $30 a month, that every month that their credit card is going to clear and not be maxed out. Scott Hansen says, join Taxi and get a new set of Ginsu knives. Um, Yes, Michael Mishnya. I can't pronounce that. Says Michael, you could charge a little bit more for the flexibility. Yeah, we probably would, because we have to pay every time we run a credit card. You would be in shock if you saw the amount that this company spends a year on credit card processing fees. In shock. I'm telling you, I could send the kids to a private college, um, for 4 years on what we spend on credit card fees. Um, yeah, if they don't pay, get a computer system to drop them automatically. What about quarterly? The reason we haven't done a 6 month submission is because our whole entire company, our database, everything about this company is set up on a 12-month thing. So if we had some people doing 6 months, some people doing 3 months, and everybody else doing 12 months, it gets hard. And then what do we do about the road rally? If we're doing a monthly thing or a quarterly thing or a 6 month thing, who gets to go to the road rally? The guy that signs up for 3 months or the person who signs up for an entire year? We would obviously get a lot of people that would sign up for oh, and then what do we do about our 100% money back guarantee? What about somebody that sees one listing that gets them really hot under the collar? They've got the perfect thing. They sign up for the 90-day membership. They make the submission and they find out, a month later they didn't get forwarded and now they want their money back. It's tough. Man, these things they're flying by right now. Um, Amanda says she can see the road rally problem. Yeah, that's a biggie. I'd like to take chicken and goats old school. I'd love that. I actually really like goats. 6 month member gets one ticket. The reason that we give away the second ticket is people want to come with a guest, though. That's the problem. A lot of people don't come if they fear that they're going to be all alone and isolated and not make a bunch of friends, which is why we're always pushing the friendly atmosphere of the road rally, which is, ask anybody who's ever been to one. They'll tell you that it's absolutely true that you make friends at the road rally faster than you will at summer camp when you're 12. But God, I wish I could keep up with these. Does Taxi ever do song contests that the winners get a free year of Taxi? No. And the reason we don't do that, do you know all these sites that do all these contests are actually, in most cases, breaking the law? Contests are very tricky. There are contest laws, and they're slightly different, if not dramatically different, each of the 50 states. So when you go on, sites that are other companies trying to emulate what we do, or song contest sites. Some of the bigger song contests have done the legal work, but it's massive. You literally have to have um, contest rules that are applicable to all 50 states or state that they're not. It's very complex to do a legal kosher contest, so we don't get involved in it. Um, Mojo says it's hard to avoid making friends at the road rally. It's true. You could go there with the intent of not making friends and probably come home with friends. Somebody says illegal. Alyssa Rafferty Fisher says illegal. We need to contest contests then. Are the majority, this is a good question from Scott Hansen, are the majority of dispatch listings for instrumentals? I would say yes. I would say probably 70 or 80%. Man, dispatch has been kicking butt lately. Um, would you consider having Matt Hurt on an episode of Taxi TV or The Insider? Yeah, I think I've actually had Matt, but it's probably time. It's probably been 2 or 3 years since he's been on. Um, should I bring a guitar to the road rally? There will be a lot of guitars floating around, but I would say, yeah, if it's not too much of a pain in the butt to get it on a plane and get it out here, it's good to have one with you. We've got them in the open mics, but people tend to congregate in hallways and, just anywhere they can at the road rally and jam. Sometimes you'll find like 15 people all in a room playing like Eagles' greatest hits and singing. I would bring a guitar. Um, That's right. Andy Gabbers says, Danny, search YouTube for Taxi and Matt Hurt. He did a 7-video series with Michael about the business, the film and TV music business. I did that years ago with Matt. And literally, I just had him come out to the office, and I took like a little $200 Casio camera and turned it on, just started talking to him. And we got about 45 minutes of stuff that I broke up into a 7-part video. People love that thing. Jesse, you got to come to a road rally, man. If you like hanging out in the chat room with all these characters during Taxi TV, you'll absolutely love the road rally. Keyboards at the road rally, yeah, we've got keyboards in the open mics. The hotel has a grand piano, but they don't like us using it because people tend to like want to play really loud. Question is if Matt would. Mojo took a guitar, never used it. Interesting. That's because he had his hand on a bottle of beer the whole time. I don't even know. I'm not sure if Mojo drinks. Michael, you Michael need a GoPro on you playing at the rally. Oh, a GoPro on my plane at the road rally. I've actually got a little quadcopter. It's got a video camera on it, but it's against the rules, probably against the law. I'm a member of the American Model Aircraft Association or whatever it is, and you're not allowed to fly stuff over people. It's very easy for something to go wrong and get somebody in the face with a prop, so I won't be doing that. I've always wanted to, though. I got to admit it. Jim Carvalho says, yeah, the rally was awesome. Yeah, we just announced the dates, by the way, for this year, November 6th through the 9th. And because you guys are my loyal viewers, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't locked down yet. But I'd say it's probable. I've been going back and forth with emails over the last 3 or 4 days, actually, with them. With Rock Mafia, Google Rock Mafia, Tim and Antonina. They are some of the hottest songwriters, producers, husband and wife team in the industry. Just an amazing bunch of hits. And I'm thinking about doing an interview with them, not as our lead interview on Friday morning, but possibly doing something I've never done before, which is having a second interview on Saturday. And these people have had an amazing career. Pretty much every A-list act that's on Top 40 radio would give up a body part to work with them. And I had lunch with Tim's former manager, who's an old friend of mine, about 2 weeks ago, and he said, hey, by the way, do you know who Tim and Antonina are? And I said, of course I know. And he said, well, they'd probably be willing to do your road rally. Let me connect you. So he shot us both an email, and I've been chatting back and forth, and they're very interested. Now it's just down to scheduling, but I hope to get them there because they are definitely big time. They're A-plus listers, not just A-listers, but A-plus. Okay, anyway, we've been on for an hour and 18 minutes, and so I hope that was helpful, the broadcast quality stuff. Excuse me. I think that watch a show a second time, if you need to, but all that stuff goes into the stew of what makes broadcast quality. And I hope that was helpful, and I will see you on the next show. I'm starting the music now. I know sometimes when I sign off, you're welcome, Wild Wine. Sometimes, or Will DeWine. Sometimes when I sign off, that I press the stop broadcasting button, and it stops faster for you than it does for me. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time on another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Bye, you guys.